Welcome to CurveBall DFI-ed, currently not sponsored by anyone. I'm your host, David Iofi, and on our 9th podcast, we have the pleasure of having Ashley Yesayen. Ashley got a degree in economics and English from Wake Forest University, and several years after receiving, she went to Columbia Business School for her MBA in entrepreneurship and finance. Throughout the years, Ashley worked in VC, where she was an investment analyst and inventor for numerous companies. In today's podcast, we will learn what drove Ashley into this new business mindset and how she ultimately ended up becoming CEO and founder of OneVillage, a startup meant to help people who have cancer. Thank you so much for coming on to our podcast today. We really appreciate it. We kind of want to get right into it. We kind of mentioned briefly your background. We want to know a little bit more about your background and how you realized that you had this entrepreneurship mindset.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me on. This is so fun to get to chat with you. So I'm excited about spending the time together. So my background, I am from a long line of entrepreneurs. So at least the third generation. I'm from South Carolina, rural South Carolina. And I remember asking my parents, what nationality we were. And my mom just looked me straight in the face and she was like, well, we're Southern. And so there was no, you're Italian or Spanish or anything like that. You were just Southern. So our legacy and our genealogy doesn't go back super far, but from what I can tell, my grandparents were entrepreneurs. They owned a truck stop in rural South Carolina. My parents owned a gas station in rural South Carolina. And at an early age, I realized that the, motor vehicle world was not my place. And pretty much did anything I could think of to get out of the South and figure out what I wanted to do. I can remember being in college and I knew I wanted to do something then too, but I remember thinking to myself, how would anybody ever do this? Like, where do you get the money from? And, how would I ever come up with an idea? And it was really interesting because then I spent the next, I guess 20 years trying to figure that stuff out. So I think it's super awesome that you figured a lot of this out early, and I'm glad to be here with you guys today.
I have a lot of family in the South, and they definitely are like that whole, like, we're not American, we're Southern. It's definitely a mindset. And I think it's
a whole thing.
Yeah. So you spoke about how you were in the South and now you live in the Northeast. Can you talk a little bit more? Obviously the way the people are in the South, they're a little friendlier. I feel like most people do know that. Can you talk a little bit more about like the mindset of the people that are in the South versus the ones in the Northeast?
Oh man, you're opening up a can of worms. So I'm really thankful that my life experiences led me to New York and to Columbia. And I think that was really the sort of turning point in my life where I started to realize how much bigger the world was than being just Southern. And so, it wasn't until my experience when I got to Columbia and all of a sudden I was surrounded by peers from all over the nation and the globe, who had done these incredible things and, made the world a better place in a lot of regards, that I realized that, I wanted to be in the bigger world.
Definitely sounds a little bit like a political speech. How you found the New York was your happy place, but the Northeast I'm talking about. But I think that people in the South are just like happier people. People in like the Northeast, it's never enough for them. They're always going after the next thing. They don't relax too much. I think that when I do end up going to the South, I'm like, oh my God, like, what am I gonna do? And then, like, what do you mean, what are you gonna do? You're just like, relax. And I'm like, no, like like that
Not
whole
my speed.
relaxation thing, I think is definitely not originated in the Northeast.
That's right. We can retire down there.
Yeah. Retire down there in the sun and just chill by the pool. So you did mention that you went to Columbia, you got your undergrad at Wake Forest. The people that you do meet at Columbia and Wake Forest are different. Can you talk a little bit more about like that whole culture that the two different schools had and how that was like clashing for you once you did start?
Sure. So I went to Wake Forest for undergrad, which a lot of the students there call work forest. So the amount of work that you have to do at Wake Forest is significant. The professors are really difficult. It's really hard to get an A. I spent 90% of my college life studying. I'm realizing what a mistake that was now. But there was a real work ethic, and people really put a lot of time and energy into kind of doing their work and getting their course load met. At Columbia, it was a much different experience. The coursework was hard. I learned a ton, but there wasn't nearly the same level of emphasis placed on the actual coursework itself. So I actually think I learned more during the time, that I was at Wake Forest for that reason. And it was really disturbing to me on one level when I got into Columbia and started doing my rounds around New York City, because when I had done those same rounds after graduating from Wake Forest, their response was, where in the heck is Wake Forest? But as soon as I said, oh, I'm at Columbia, I'm a student, I'm studying there, people said, wow, that's so impressive. You must be super smart. Can I take you to lunch, etc. And it really bugged me at first that I was getting such a different reception because my experience of the actual coursework was so different. But then, I realized that for a lot of people, Ivy League institutions are a kind of a checking the box place to go. They kind of pre-screen these candidates and people who they think, are going to go out and do good things in the world. And so it's, taking a risk level down, I guess you might call it.
I definitely think that like for graduate school, that definitely does make sense. But for undergrad, it's kind of like feeders from boarding schools get like all these kids go to the Ivies. So I definitely do understand where the companies are coming from. But even for myself, when I do reach out to startups, I used to like my introduction to them would be like, hey, I'm a student from Stevens. And then I would like go with the whole pitch. And then a lot of them wouldn't answer. So then I restructured it and I said, hello, I'm the founder of Team DFI. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, a founder is reaching out to us.
Right.
So you kind of have to play the game and learn when to pull the founder card, when you went to where you went to school. And also the thing that you do realize about like a lot of people that do go to like Harvard or like MIT, they're always like, oh yeah, right? No matter what you talk about, within the first sentence of you talking to them, they'll somehow slither in that they went to Harvard, MIT, like it's just like a whole, but obviously going to Columbia is really beneficial. Their business school is one of the top business schools. Do you think that you got to the success level that you're at right now? Kind of like it was a mix because of your work ethic, because of your school. How do you think you got to where you're at?
Yeah. So I have always been fascinated by all those studies that you see talking about how most CEOs are C students. They're just very average students. And that's not the case for all of the CEOs that I know, but it seems to be the case for a lot of us where we got maybe A's or B's or A's and B's and C's, but academics wasn't the place where we really hit our stride. It was in kind of putting things together and solving problems and sort of I guess the ethos of a liberal arts education, I think, was helpful. And, I can always tell when I've in the past interviewed students who've had a liberal arts versus a technical education, and just sort of the synthesis and thought process is a lot different from, students who've had to go through all of the critical thinking exercises of philosophy and history, even though they're not directly relevant to a career path. But no, it's a great question, and I think that it's certainly my street smarts and ability to synthesize that's gotten me to where I am. However, I will really credit Columbia with giving me an entirely different platform to play on, which was the city of New York, and all the amazing, resources we had on campus too.
I think that another thing that definitely does help in your career that you definitely won't acknowledge because it's very not humbling at all is the fact that coming from the South, the people are nicer. So I think that definitely that helps you get in the room with a lot of people because you are extremely nice. And if you are a good person, chances are you're going to succeed or people are going to want to help you. And I think that a lot of people from the Northeast, they don't really have that whole mindset where it's they're kind of I'm going to get this deal done and then that's it. So kind of when you try to be a good person, everybody's like, oh, what's his angle? They kind of can't understand why are they being a good person. But definitely I think that has been able to help you get to where you are. And definitely getting into VC and breaking in is super hard. And you reviewed a lot of pitch decks and you invested in good companies, bad companies. What are some metrics that you would say are the worst? Because a lot of people, they do look at the numbers. I personally think that the numbers are the worst, are the best way to get yourself stuck because the numbers lie. So what are some metrics that you absolutely hated using and looking when you were talking to early stage startups?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I might just reframe it a little bit to say that it's maybe not that the numbers are lying, but it's the way that you're looking at leading and lagging indicators. And whether or not you're correctly assessing whether they're relevant for the particular, I call it business physics, of a particular company. So, a lot of times, just making it simple, with, my own business. So, we're a consumer facing company. And so, website traffic and, engagement is important for us as a leading indicator of sales. But, whereas, and so those are things that, I would be, sharing with investors and wanting to kind of pump up. Whereas, if there was a B2B company, that was selling, accounting software, those are interesting, but not relevant. So it's, when people get those things mixed up.
I mean, that definitely does make sense. I understand the angle that you are coming from. I think that when you are, and everybody's like, hey, we're the next unicorn. When you're looking for unicorns, I think that you can't only look at the numbers because unicorns are not based on the numbers exclusively. They're based on the team. And I think the team at the end of the day in early stage startups was significantly more important than the numbers, because if you're at a pre-seed company or even pre-revenue, the numbers are all going to be nonsense at that point. But then obviously Series A and all that point, you do have to pay closer attention. But I don't understand why the funds put so much emphasis on the numbers before there's even anything there.
I'll give you my theory. Because that's been a personal issue that I've always had around the investment table. Because, I've always, I cook with my heart and I invest with my heart as well. Fortunately, I'm pretty good cook and a pretty good investor as well. But that was incredibly frustrating for my colleagues, particularly in one of my last roles, which was in a growth equity fund where the companies were larger and there were actually more metrics to focus on. But it's really interesting because I thought that a lot. We ended up investing in this company called Temper Pack. They make recyclable styrofoam, and we invested in them early. They're right now the only global producer that can create styrofoam in a recyclable manner that's as thermally efficient. So they're crushing it. The investment has, you know, done, 100 times, in revenue what it did when I invested in it just a couple years ago. Anyway, but that investment was one that you had to make by looking at the trends and saying, hey, people are sick of waste, and people are going to demand this, and this is a pretty complicated process, and there's this big barrier by having the only producer who has this patented process of doing it this particular way and already has all these contracts locked up. And so that was one example of where making that early bet off of signals versus numbers has paid off significantly in terms of return. So
I mean,
I agree.
Yeah, and definitely the team and the signals from outside, if we should pay attention to them, that definitely does help. One thing that I have noticed, as I do talk to a lot of founders, is that a lot of people that are in this space, they tend to be males, and there's not too many women that are pushing in the space, and I never understood why. But every single time that I do talk to some, like a female that's in the space, she definitely knows exactly what she's going for, and it's more like they avoid the fluff. That there's a lot of companies, they hide a lot, like there's a lot of fluff there. But when I do talk to like strong women in the field, it like makes me push, and like I'd be like, okay, like there's like the good side of it as well. Why do you think that is, that there's like not that many women in the field as there should be?
Yeah. Well, so I have always said, specifically, I'll talk about venture capital. So I believe that venture capital is one of the last cottage industries that exists. And what I mean by that is that it's truly an apprenticeship business. There's not really a course, or I mean, I think that, there probably are some, but, there's not a course or a book that you can take to become an expert and to really understand what goes into making some of these decisions or running the companies and managing the teams and things that are required in that role. And so venture capital is there, I think, are 6.7% women in venture capital, the rest being men, and like 99% of those people are white. And so it is very intimidating to kind of break into that atmosphere. And I think the reason that most women don't, or a lot of women don't, is that because it's a cottage industry, it's bros and their dads talking about it, and Nantucket or whatever, whereas I was cleaning off gas pumps in South Carolina, and so I just think that the lack of awareness is one problem, because it's not something that I ever sat around and talked about with my family or friends growing up. And yeah, I also think that there are bias. There is bias out there, and I have gotten to a point where I don't like it or dislike it. I just recognize that it's there, and I don't know that all women in particular, really want to live in a world where you specifically know there's bias against you. So
Yeah, I mean, coming from the engineering background myself, definitely there's a huge incentive of bringing women to on construction sites and like majoring in engineering. And I think that it's really good that there's like a push for in sectors mainly dominated by men, because I think that women bring a different edge. Just like in venture capital, if everybody was in finance, then the industry would not be doing as well. But somehow you have engineers there, you have doctors, because it can't just be one group of people. You kind of have to put diversity in there to kind of have different views on the thing. So I think that that's a really good thing, and I hope that in the future the industry kind of does shift. Um,
Me too. And I'm just going to throw in a quick plug. If there are any ladies listening who are trying to break into the field, there's an incredible organization called All Raise, which launched a few years ago, founded by a group of women venture capitalists and founders whose mission it is to demystify this startup world for women so that we can get more of them in those roles.
Yeah. I mean, definitely you breaking into BC, that probably gave you like this crazy confidence. You're like, if I can make it here, I can make it anywhere. Kind of like how they say it about New York City. Is that what ultimately gave you the confidence to quit your job and be like, I have it in me to start my own company, and you jumped off with OneVillage?
I was talking to the founder of Timber Pack actually the other day, and he's a friend of mine, and I was asking him, I was like, so, at what point were you kind of like, yeah, I've got this, And he's like, you're going to kill me. But he was like, it was well after the Series B, which is where I invested. And he made this really good point. And he said, it's because, the thing is that, first you need to get seed money in. And so you raise that. And then, already you failed because you need to hit the next milestone. And so then, you get your Series A in, and then now you've still failed because, you're still trying to get to those metrics and milestones of the Series B. So, he said, everything is always resetting itself. And I thought that was, I can tell you it's a very true analogy when it comes to startups, but I think it's probably a good one when it comes to life as well. Because, I always used to think that, right? Just as soon as I get this, that's when, I'll start to, feel confident in my abilities, or that's when I'll know that I've made it, etc. But anyway, sorry, that's a long-winded way of saying that I don't think any of that's really true. And how did I get the confidence? I got the confidence because there was a major market need, and there were a lot of people who are getting sick. Cancer is a problem where people are continuing to get sick. We're putting lots of money towards research, but every year there's 6 million people who are going through treatment, and that number isn't changing. And in fact, it's only going up. What is changing is the death rate around cancer. So it's no longer a death sentence. So more of those people are living, but they're living with massive psychological problems, both during and after their treatment, that nobody's focused on. And so anyway, I didn't have the confidence per se. I just realized that there was a big need out there, and that I had the experience and the connections that could help me make a difference in it. So I jumped.
I mean, that's like the best way to start a company. You see a need, you're looking for something that other people need. It's not out there, and you're like, okay, this is really needed. And then you go out there and do it yourself. But working like with cancer patients is definitely hard. How do you separate your feelings from like the business side of it, or do you blend them in?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I had lunch today with my friend Luke, who's the CEO of Latch, which is a connected lock company. They went public, I guess, a year or two ago, and I've known Luke since this company was a couple people in a garage, and I asked him how he was managing and how he had managed this company and his stress level, and the separation with the business from the time it was this company in a little garage to now a public company. And Luke made me actually feel a lot better about myself, because he was like, there really is no separation. And I wish I could tell you that, there was some great answer that I have for you on how to get that. But I don't know that a lot of us find that. And I think that's something that I certainly miss from the before days, when I was an employee versus a founder, is that ability to turn things off. oh, it's okay, I can go on vacation and it's okay if this doesn't get done. But, in my head, as the person who's signing paychecks, I'm realizing how much cash is going out the door, if I'm not there to answer the questions. So yeah, I think you never really get the right separation if you're a founder.
I'm talking about like towards like the people that do use your platform. Obviously, it is hard when somebody passes away, but especially from like the community side of platform, which you guys kind of have like this huge group of people that do help each other. How do you react when something like that does occur?
Yeah, this is a really difficult this is a difficult job. This is a difficult sector to be in. It does personally affect me. Um, however, I come into work every day excited and ready to go on this challenge because, I want to give these people the best experience that I can while they are here with us. And honestly, we're not doing as much on the end of life side of the platform as I would like to, or I know that we're capable of, just because of the way that a startup works with finite resources and time. We've decided to focus our efforts on the area that is the time between diagnosis and end of treatment, which tends to be the most vulnerable time for a lot of patients. But we certainly see modules and support, both for people who are survivors as well as for people and their families who are going down on end of life.
In our first podcast, we had the pleasure of having the business owner of one of the largest dialysis centers in the Northeast. And Claire kind of spoke about when she did start her company, how it kind of felt like when somebody would pass, and how like the first times it did happen, how she had a close relationship with them, it truly affected her. So she kind of had to take like a little bit of like a step back and reassess the relationship she has, because as a business owner, you do want your business to keep going. And if you're affected by things like a normal person would be, you kind of have to think of the situation differently, where it's like, this person passed, yes, but now I'm able to, with the experience that I had with this person, help the next person significantly more. And it's not like you're forgetting about it. It's just you're building and building and building. So when the next person does come, you're just able to give them the support much more and help them much more.
Exactly.
So I think that that's definitely something which is true. But I just wanted to make sure that it was like kind of on the same path. And obviously, it's one of those, like for me personally, like I applaud all the people that do work with people that are sick, or because for me personally, I don't know if I would be able to handle it. Working with like cancer patients, or like even kids that do have Down syndrome, for me is really hard. I teach chess in Hoboken because I like to teach and to give back as much as I could. But for me, it's just very hard emotionally to work with people that are sick. And I wouldn't be able to deal with it. So I applaud all the people that are out there and doing it, because they could definitely be getting paid significantly more for the job that they are doing. But the people that do those jobs truly love that and want to help. So I applaud all those people all the time. Yeah, I want to know. So definitely venture capital is like the sexy career. You see all these people with the suits, they're doing all this fun stuff, fancy dinners. Is there anything that you miss from that life?
Um, so I am so thankful that I got the chance to spend time in BC. And one of the things that I loved the most about it was the fact that every day you were learning about a new sector and a new business, and then being able to kind of translate certain things that you'd learned from one to the other. So it really gave me a ton of intellectual um, breadth, I guess, if you will, to explore things that interested me. And so, as somebody who probably has undiagnosed ADHD, that was really helpful to me, and, a really fun time. in my career. Right now, obviously the problems that I'm solving are confined to a particular sector and a particular company at that. And it's given me the ability to kind of, the startup life is, I guess, uh, really all about wearing all the different hats. So I guess I'm doing a little bit of the same thing in a different way. But I do miss, being able to kind of think about what's the next hottest sector versus how do I make this thing run day to day.
Yeah. I think that also working in VC, you have a lot of different challenges versus as working in one sector, you have different challenges, but they're more focused. Can you talk a little bit more about how the challenges you faced in your VC role helped you with the challenges that you have in OneVillage?
Yeah. Well, so the the benefit of working in venture capital, has been you know plentiful. And one of the things that I'm most grateful for is the opportunity that I had to serve on so many boards. So, over the last 15 years or so, I would guess that I've probably been an observer, board observer for maybe 20 companies, something like that. And so at various different industries and stages and things like that. So it was very eye-opening, to have a lot of those exposures to problems with, marketing or strategy or personnel or hiring. And I think I've learned a bunch of lessons from that, not the least of which is fire quickly. Because I think that's a standard problem that a lot of first time entrepreneurs in particular have. And so being able to be decisive around decisions that are unpleasant but need to be made, and just kind of recognizing them as a part of life, not like an existential crisis, I think has been helpful.
Yeah. You said that you were on other companies' boards and how you learned a little bit more about that. For your company, we did look at OneVillage's board, and some of the companies that you used to observe on in your previous venture are now currently on your board. Do you think that that networking effect that you did have has currently helped you push your goal further in the future? Or why did you choose to have those same people on your board?
Yeah, 100%. Um, I am very blessed to have been able to work and learn from all of the entrepreneurs that I mentioned. And this is a hard job, and I've had the chance to work with people who are crushing it. And so for that I'll always be very grateful. Mark Katz, for example, is the founder of Custom Ink, which is a custom t-shirt producer. I worked with him while I was at Revolution on his board. And Mark built that company from his college dorm room to a private equity exit. So he's seen a lot and done a lot, and Mark has been critical to me at a number of junctures along the way, just in helping me to think through business model questions or go-to-market strategies, along with introducing me to his friends, which included the co-founders of Wedding Wire, which is a, wedding, planning business. Its business model is based on a registry. That's actually where we got the idea for OneVillage and our registry. So his colleagues from Wedding Wire, Sunny and Lee, have also been, very instrumental. So the list goes on, but, that's just, kind of one reason why those connections have been really influential.
Working has effects that you wouldn't even think that would normally have, because like at the end of the day, it's a very simple but hard skill to master, like simple implementation but hard to master and be good at it. Kind of like how they say like skiing is easy to learn but it's hard to master it, because you're basically talking to a person, but then that person has to go on his free time and be like, oh, how could I help this person by connecting them? So it's kind of like you have to have a certain impact on the person that you're asking to help you in order for them to want to help you in their free time and kind of build those connections. And I know personally for us at Team DFI, we're very fortunate that a lot of the startups that we do talk to, they like what we do and they're able to connect us to other to investors or other startups. And we were very lucky because some of the startups that we actually did talk to, they connected us to like C2 Ventures, and we're able to like talk to these funds that we normally wouldn't be on our radars. And just opportunities that you get through networking are just just things that I wouldn't normally expect. And I definitely encourage everybody to network, even though it is hard. Like in middle school, I was definitely way more shy, but once I did start like ascending and I realized that this is what I want to do, I was like, okay, I have to go out and master this skill now, because the older I get, it's going to be harder.
That's good. Yeah, get your practice in early.
Yeah, and especially if you have a client-facing role, you have to have the confidence and ability to go out and do certain things. And if you're not good at networking, you're not. It's going to be harder for you to like go out there and talk to the clients. What are some qualities that you see that good founders do have that are in this whole client-facing role?
Yeah. Well, in business school, I kept getting recruited for sales and trading. Everybody wanted me to go onto the sales side, believe it or not. And, ultimately, I, went down the VC path. But, anyway, I kept asking them, I was like, why do you guys keep trying to like get me to do this? And they're like, honestly, like the thing is that like, you're smart, like you get it, like, and there's a lot of people who are smart and get it, but you need to be somebody who people want to go and have a drink with, at the end of a long day. And they're like, if you can be that person, then, you can pretty much sell anything. And I don't know, it's interesting. Hopefully I'm a person that people want to have drinks with, but, I think maybe some of that does owe to my southern roots, friendliness. But yeah.
100% people from the South are way nicer. When I went to Texas with my friend earlier in the year, I went there and we like stuck out like sore thumbs because or not only is it because we're like extremely tall. I happen to be like 6'6" and he's 6'3", so we were like
Towering over.
yeah, we were like towering over everybody, but we were also like the only people there without like the Southern accents. And everybody there was like so nice. They're like, take it easy. Like, let's relax, let's chat. And we were like, no, we're here on the time crunch. We got to get as much done as possible.
Right.
And I think that when you have like a mix of those two worlds where you still have that kindness and you have like that whole, like, I'm going to get the job done, that blend is something super crucial. And I think that I'm very fortunate that I have come from like the immigrant side of things, where it's like I see how hard my family has worked to get to where they're at right now. So I have that whole side of things. But then I did used to play basketball, like AAU in high school, and I was playing with a lot of like less fortunate people. So I kind of saw how they were at, and I kind of like mixed and saw like, oh, like if I'm nice to them, they'll be nice to me. Because everybody, like if you're nice to people, they'll be nice back to you. And as the energy that you put out into the world, eventually somebody will come out and give it back to you. So that's kind of the way that I've been approaching all the situations in life. And that's why I get a lot of the things that I do get done. And everybody's like, oh, how'd you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I just asked them, reached out to them, and they were just really nice. And they saw I was nice. I was trying to help them. And that's the best way, I think, to succeed in this world.
I agree. I think people do business with people they want to be friends with. So
yeah, if you're able to market yourself to that level where people do want to work with you, your life will be much easier. The thing though is that when you do start your business, you still do have hardships. You could be the nicest person, but it matters how you get out of those like valleys. Can you talk a little bit about like a tough place that you were at and how you got out of it?
Yeah. Life-wise or
Well, like you could talk about both if you want, or you could pick
okay.
one.
Well, they're both kind of related. I'll tell
Yeah.
you a story. So about 5 years ago, I think I told you a little bit about this, but
Yeah.
walked into this doctor's office and they were like, you have cancer, it's spread, your hair's gonna fall out, we're taking off body parts, like, my world fell apart. And at that point, I was up and coming in my venture capital career. I had spent my entire life, up until that point, focused on, work and, how to, get to the next thing and get to the next level. Had a lot of my, frankly, self-worth tied up in my career. And so I got to this place where, in venture capital, it's a relationship business. Venture capital is also basically a sales job. Like it's glorified a little bit, but
Yeah.
it's sales. And so to do sales, you have to travel and you have to, be in front of people and, you have to be able to, present the face of the company. And going through cancer treatments stripped me of my ability to do that. So I would come in to the office when I was able, and I'd see all my colleagues and friends out traveling and going on to the next thing in their careers. But I was stuck in a chemo chair.
Yeah.
And so I thought to myself, well, what, and I was single at the time too. So I was like, my life is the worst. Like, I hate this all, et cetera. So I thought, okay, like I've got to change my attitude and get better about this. And I said to myself, so what is the one thing that I can do while I'm in VC that all my colleagues can't do because they're out traveling 4 days a week? And so that I can, still progress in my career, because I really didn't want to lose that after having, spent so much time working for it. So I realized I needed to see what industries TC was good at, so that I could focus my efforts there. And it so happened it was cybersecurity, something I knew nothing about, and some place that the firm hadn't put any bets yet. So, I turned what was a really sour, situation into the opportunity to explore this new category. I ultimately didn't make any investments in the space, but I did meet my husband through all of that. So
That's
it
an investment. That is an
totally
investment.
worked out. It was a good investment for me. But yeah, so, speaking of networking, so I said to myself, so how am I going to do that? And I said, I'm literally just I had like 3 hours a day where I felt well enough to do something. And I was like, I'm just gonna, put my, self together. And in those 3 hours a day, I'm going to meet with anybody in this town who knows anything about cybersecurity and will help me understand it. So yeah, he was a blind intro and is a cybersecurity VC here in town.
He still like pitch you on cybersecurity, or that's not a topic of conversation anymore?
What's funny is that he's a very good investor, and they've been really active this year. And Murad gets upset with me sometimes because he's always trying to like tell me all the nuanced, elements of the deal and the particular technology. And I guess he feels like I should know like what he's talking about because I dipped my toe into it a bit. But I think that's the only disadvantage.
Yeah, one thing that I do respect is that besides everything else that you did say, but like on top of that, like the cherry is the fact that you didn't make any excuses for yourself and you kind of went out and you're like, okay, like I'm in this tough position, but I'm gonna figure it out and I'm gonna keep pushing my career over. I think that a lot of times people find themselves in a tricky situation and they're like, I'm just gonna let it like the wind dust over or however that phrase goes.
Yeah.
But like that's kind of like one of those things where it's like myself, like I was trying to get a VC job, and I've been pushing and applying for every fellowship, summer internship. Nobody was handing anything. Nobody was helping me out. And instead of sitting there waiting, I decided that I'm going to just basically become like a first year analyst, go out, meet these amazing startups and build these connections. And now you, like most people that are in the position that I'm at, they don't have the connections with all the startups that I have.
Right?
And all I've been doing is like just betting on myself. And you have nothing to lose when you do bet on yourself, because you're already in this unfortunate situation. So why not try? And I think that's the most important thing, that you should always bet on yourself.
Well, and just so it doesn't go unsaid, I am very impressed with what you've accomplished. I think it's badass what you've been able to build here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. To end off the podcast, this was definitely one of the best podcasts that I had. I really like the energy that you put into it. I wanted to ask like one final piece of advice that you would give to everybody right now who's like coming up in the entrepreneur journey. What would you tell them? What would you tell them based on your career up to this point?
This is just the beginning, is what I would say. It's really interesting, and I'm just learning this myself. But I think that when we're younger, we look at things as like, oh my God, if I don't get this venture internship, my life is over. And like, I'm gonna have to go live under a bridge, like I always felt like things were kind of binary, it's coming up. But the thing is that, my path wasn't linear per se, but every single bit of it added something really important to my decision-making skills, my network, my knowledge. And yeah, I wish I'd been less, I wish I'd been less, harsh on myself to, get to that next milestone and, turn over that next rock, because it's all good, and you're going to get there wherever it is that you want to be. It just takes a little time.
Yeah, you just got to believe in yourself and you'll ultimately get there. Thank you so much, Ashley, for being on our podcast.